Hey guys, Rob Dabney here with ADV Pulse, and we are in the Azores for the press launch of the Husqvarna Norden 901. It's been roughly 2 years since the prototype was first released to the public, and at that time pretty much everybody loved the way the bike looked, and Husqvarna knew that they had to build it because of the resounding success of the prototype launch. So Husqvarna received a tried and tested platform from KTM from the 890 series, and their target market for this bike is the travel crowd. So sure already had an excellent chassis and an incredible motor, and now they took that platform and decided that they were going to make changes to it to improve it for that particular market. And that's basically the idea behind the Norden. So what you get with the Norden 901 is an 889cc parallel twin with 105 horsepower. You also have the full array of electronics, which include traction control, lean angle sensitive ABS. Even the traction control is lean angle sensitive. You've got rider modes for rain, street, off-road, and the optional Explorer mode, which allows you to turn on the rally setting for a more high performance throttle response, different levels of slip. You can change the throttle responses. You can customize how much intervention you want with the traction control. It's basically the top of the line in terms of electronics. In terms of the chassis, you've got the same 21-inch front, 18-inch rear wheels. You've got ample ground clearance, but a difference between this bike and the 890 series is going to be the suspension. And what you're getting is the WP Apex suspension that comes on the standard 890, but unlike the standard 890, this one is adjustable. They also increased the suspension travel from the standard 890, so it slots right in there in between an R model and the standard model. So the R model is a very high performance bike with a very stiff suspension. This bike has got a little softer, more compliant ride, and it's got more suspension travel and more adjustability than the 890 standard bike. So right there in the middle in terms of ground clearance, seat height, and suspension travel. The seat height on this starts out at 33.6 inches in the low configuration, and you can raise it up about an inch if you pop it up into the high configuration. So reasonable seat height, good ground clearance, a great off-road chassis, and you got the 21 18-inch wheel combo. But the one thing they did do is they tried to tune this more for the touring crowd, more for the travel crowd. This isn't a race bike. It's more of a comfortable off-road travel bike that you're gonna be able to ride all day, and it's gonna absorb 90% of the punishment that you give it. But you know, some of the bigger bumps, it may not be able to adapt to those as well as the R version. But in terms of the typical riding that most adventure riders do, it's gonna take care of anything that you throw at it. So a little bit softer, a little more supple, and more comfortable means at the end of the day, you're gonna be less tired, enjoying the ride a lot more. Going along with the travel theme, you get a lot of really nice travel amenities like these hand guards that help protect your hands from the wind, a nice sized windscreen, and also one of the things they spent a lot of time on was this seat. And I can tell you right now, it's a very comfortable seat, and it's got a nice leather style finish that keeps you from sliding around. And you also have a rear rack, lots of nice adjustability in the touch points, like the bars can be moved forward. You can adjust the brake lever on the foot to raise it up higher. There's also cruise control, an option for Bluetooth connectivity, and you can hook up your phone and get GPS navigation, also turn-by-turn directions with audio directions going to your headset. So a lot of this is very focused towards the touring crowd. The other difference from the KTM 890 Adventure is going to be in the bodywork. You've got this full wraparound fairing. Also, it's a bigger bike. You can feel that. It feels a little bit bigger, and I think that's mainly just because of the fuel tank shape where it splays your legs out a little bit. It's a little bit wider up top than an 890. I think they had to, reshape the tank to get the look that they wanted for this bike and have the integrated LED headlights, so it doesn't have that extreme tank design like the 890. But that's also given them an advantage of being able to have a more accurate fuel range. With the 890 series, if you've ever ridden one, as soon as the tank goes to half full, that's when it starts to tell you how much fuel you have left. But you have to wait until it gets to half full because of the shape of that tank. With this one, it can start telling you right at about 80% fuel capacity. After that, it will start to tell you how much fuel you have left very accurately. So there are some advantages of this tank design other than just the looks of it. Although the different tank design has resulted in a fuel capacity of 5 gallons compared to 5.3 on the KTM. The other difference, there's like premium finishes on the bike. For instance, you've got this bronze colored fuel cap. The side covers on the bike are bronze colored. These premium color schemes really just stand out for those who want a unique bike. But beyond the aesthetics, you know, there's some other things that you get with this bike that you don't get on an 890. You get the LED light standard, and as I mentioned, cruise control standard, and also the quick shifter standard. That allows you to do clutchless shifts, and that comes in really handy when you're going through the gears, trying to pass cars, making quick shifts, but also off-road when you're in technical terrain, fully loaded with gear. If you want to be able to just shift gears without grabbing that clutch, you can do it. And sometimes it's the difference between having a dab and not. So they're throwing in a lot of cool accessories that you might have to pay extra for. And the price is actually pretty good when you start considering all the things that this bike comes with. So how does it ride? Well, we've been riding this bike for 2 days, over a couple hundred miles now. You know, just starting with the ergonomics, you know, sitting on this bike on the highway, the reach to the bars, the knee bend, and just the general seating position is really perfect for longer distances. My height is 6'2". And, you know, shorter riders as well have all said that this bike is very comfortable for them. You don't feel like you're too far outstretched or anything like that. And you've got this fantastic seat that makes that long distance riding much more enjoyable. The windscreen, I would say it's an average height windscreen. It's not too tall. So I did notice that the wind would go up to about goggle level when going down the highway, not quite over your head. But they also have a tall windscreen accessory option, and there's an extender option that you can attach to this existing windscreen. For us in the United States, we're not going to get this smoke-colored windscreen. We're going to get the clear one for NHTSA regulation reasons. Riding this bike on the windy roads of the Azores, the first day we had a ton of rain, and these roads, they go through all sorts of different ranch land, and there's cow dung on the roads. There's actually moss growing on the roads because it's such a wet environment here. So I've never been in such a slippery environment before, where I really was happy to have that rain mode on the bike. You could give it all the throttle you wanted coming in and out of turns, and the bike automatically would smoothly cut the throttle back to make sure that you didn't spin out. That is actually part of that lean angle sensing technology, and you could really feel it when you're in the turn, that you could just grab a fistful of throttle and it would just slowly accelerate out of the turn, and as soon as it starts straightening up, then it knows it can get some good traction and it takes off. So in rain mode, you're looking at about 82 horsepower down from the standard 105 horsepower. So that's a real manageable level, and the throttle response is just so smooth. It never hiccuped or stuttered. You know, sometimes on other bikes I've been on, you're in that rain mode and it all of a sudden realizes it gets traction and it just takes off and it's very jerky. But this would be really smooth if you had a passenger on the back or lots of luggage and you just want to have that extra peace of mind when it gets really wet and slippery like that. Now today it dried up on these roads and we were finally able to let it go a little bit and get on the gas. And I really preferred just putting it in the rally mode, which just gives you full power, full throttle response. And this thing will just pick that wheel up in second gear, and it's one of the easiest bikes to wheelie that I've ever ridden. It's just got so much linear torque and it's so smooth through the power band. There's no raise in the power at the higher RPM. It's just perfectly smooth and never surprises you. It'll also pick it up in third gear too if you hit that throttle and give it a little clutch. So great handling on the roads. It's got the feel of more of a sport touring bike once you lean it over. And the nice thing is the pegs are really high. So some bikes that you ride, they have the lower peg, lower ground clearance, and you're constantly scraping pegs. You can just sit in the saddle, enjoy the ride. You're not gonna scrape the pegs on this thing. As far as off-road riding, we got onto some really neat trails out here. It was sort of a foreign type of terrain that I'm not used to. And so a lot of the times I just put it in off-road mode because I really didn't know how much traction I was gonna get. And the standard off-road mode is great while you're filling out a bike. You can really feel, you know, the rear tire slipping around, but it doesn't slip out enough to really scare you. And when I turned it off and started putting it in rally mode and playing around with the slip adjustment, then I could really feel how slippery the surfaces were that we were riding on. And at one point we were up at the top of this volcano and there was all this little pumice pebbles built into the soil, and it was almost impossible to get traction on that stuff with just your wrist. So even some of these excellent riders out here on this ride, they were always putting it in slip mode 2 and putting it in rally mode, and switching between 2 and 4 in that range. Even Lyndon Poskett, he was riding around in level 1 and 2 as well, and he's a rally racer who's done Dakar several times. So it is actually helping you keep traction better than your wrist can. As far as the handling of the bike, you do notice a little bit more girth with the tank, and I found that riding seated was a little bit harder to do on this bike just because I wanted to get up forward on the tank and the seat is a little bit low. So they do have a rally seat option that they're going to come out with, like a one-piece seat option, and that would actually probably help for the sit-down ergonomics in terms of seated, leg out type riding when you're on smooth dirt roads. Standing up feels a lot better on this bike. You can get all your weight over that front wheel, and the front wheel grips pretty good. So with this bike, its tires are somewhere in that maybe 60% street, 40% dirt range. So sometimes, we got into the chunkier type of terrain, you could feel that front end pushing, and it maybe felt a little bit heavier than it really is. But I think if you put a more proper knobby on it, it would track better. But these tires are really going to be more for high mileage, great balance between street and dirt, and that's where this bike is really targeted. The suspension, it's really soft and compliant over the bigger bumps, but as soon as you get into something like a large jump or a big whoop or a water crossing rut or something like that where you have a very fast, hard hit, you can feel the bike bottom sometimes in the rear. I hit a sharp bump in the front also at one point and did bottom out the front also. So we were really pushing the boundaries on this bike, pushing the performance as much as we could on the terrain that we did. So we did see some of the limitations, but the idea is that you have that nice, comfortable suspension that is going to be more for the travel crowd than the race crowd. So just keep that in mind, that this is a bike that is going to be more enjoyable to ride all day for long travel trips. Overall, I like the approach that they took with the Norden in terms of the target market and where they're focusing this model. We've got bikes like the KTM 890R for people who are really going to go out and push hard on their adventure bike. And then there's the standard 890, which is going to be more of a base model in the lineup. And then this fits right in the middle there with a bike that's got beautiful looks. It's something that just is unique and stands out. It's got better performance than the standard 890. It's a little bit heavier. Sure, you've got, some extra body work and LED lights and extra accessories that are going to raise the weight a little bit, but I don't think it was that much of a big difference in the weight that you're noticing it. Also, the fact that it's just a very comfortable bike to ride. So the seating and then the actual accessories that it comes with, it's all about the riding experience rather than just the spec sheet. And I think that people who are not going to go out and race their bike or aren't going out there to ride their adventure motorcycle like a dirt bike every weekend are probably going to be happier with something like this suspension rather than the R suspension, just because the R suspension is really designed for more of the racer type of rider. So it all depends on what you're looking for. So the Norden 901 will be arriving on U.S. dealer floors between November and December of 2021, and it's going to have a price tag of $13,999 US. We're going to have a full review coming out on the website. You can check it out at advpulse.com, and thanks for watching.